Hello, this is Patricia Elizee from the Elizee Law Firm. We're an immigration and family law firm located in Miami, Florida. Now, when it comes to our family law issues, we help people dealing with divorces, child support, relocation, pre and postnuptials, for those that are located mostly in Miami-Dade or Broward County. I'm here with Alex, who's our family law paralegal, and today we're going to be focused exclusively on postnuptial and prenuptial agreements.
Good afternoon, I'm Alexander Rojas, and I'm the Family Law Paralegal of Elizee Law Firm, and today we're going to discuss several questions and statistics about prenuptial and postnuptial agreements. There's several misconceptions about prenuptial agreements. One is that usually men are the one that have prenuptial agreements, but it's been shown that 46% of women are the ones that initiate a prenuptial agreement.
So according to these statistics, more and more women are actually asking for a prenuptial and a postnuptial agreement. And that makes a lot of sense as more and more women are climbing through the corporate ladder. They're providing financially for their families. So the fact that now 46% of women are asking for postnuptial and prenuptial agreements, it's clear that there is a misconception that only men are the one asking for these agreements before they enter into a marriage.
And also there's another misconception. Usually the general public believes that prenuptial and postnuptial agreements are for celebrities or for the rich or for people who are wealthy, but that's not the case. Majority of prenups are created for protecting the spouse from entering into a marriage that has a lot of debt.
So that makes a lot of sense, and especially when it comes to those that are entering maybe their second or third marriage, because the likelihood of you entering into a marriage the second time and you getting a divorce is a lot higher. So for example, 60 to 67% of people who enter into their second marriage have a chance of getting a divorce, while if it's your third marriage, there's a 73 or 74% chance of getting into a divorce if you're married a third time. So the fact that you're entering into a second marriage or a third marriage, so you may have some debt that you want to make sure that your spouse doesn't incur, or you want to protect yourself from your other spouse's debt, and that's a really good idea.
So another misconception is that the general public believe that they're expensive. They're not expensive. Ultimately, they're just the fraction of a cost of a divorce.
That's a really good point, because let's say a prenup or a postnup may cost anywhere, and it depends on the attorney or the state or the city you go into, but let's say they cost anywhere between $1,500 to $5,000. The average cost of a divorce is around $7,500 and up. So $7,500 to $10,000, $12,000, compared to paying for a prenup, you're saving a lot of money. So it's more expensive at the end of the day not to get a prenup than it is to actually get one.
So we're going to discuss a couple questions that we received into our office, and we're going to discuss those questions today. The first question that we received is, I'm planning to get married. Do I need a premarital agreement?
So a prenuptial agreement is not a requirement of getting married. For you to get married, you have to go ahead and go to the clerk of courts, present your state ID, get your marriage license, etc. A prenuptial agreement is definitely not a requirement of marriage. You don't need one to get married. Is it recommended? Yes, it is recommended that you do get a prenup, because you're able to address a lot of the issues that may come up in a possible divorce later on, even before you get married. So you put everything on the table before you enter into that relationship.
So we get a lot of calls. Mostly, the question is, what does a prenuptial and postnuptial agreement discuss?
So that's definitely a very common question. In a pre or postnuptial agreement, what you're able to contract to is basically equitable distribution, which means how are you going to divide marital debt and marital property. So if you were to divorce your spouse, how are you going to divide any marital assets that you were to acquire together or separately, and how are you going to divide this marital debt? In an agreement, you're also able to discuss inheritance. So if you do not have a prenuptial agreement and you enter into a relationship and you enter into a marriage, if you were to pass, your spouse automatically gets a certain percentage of your estate. Now, let's say you have children, right? And you want to make sure that your children get a bigger part of your estate, then that would go into the agreement. So these are two really important things that you can address. The third is alimony. Do you intend on asking for alimony in case of a divorce? These are things that it's really useful to talk about and think over with your spouse before you actually enter into that marriage.
So another question that we receive is usually people know about prenuptial agreements, but not a lot of people know about postnuptial agreements. What is a postnuptial agreement, and what's the difference between that and a prenuptial agreement?
So the only difference between a prenuptial agreement and a postnuptial agreement is that a prenuptial agreement is pre-marriage. You enter into a prenuptial agreement before the marriage. A postnuptial agreement is an agreement that's entered into after you've legally gotten married. Now, you can enter into a postnuptial agreement a day after the legal marriage, a week after the legal marriage, or even 10 years after the legal marriage. So I've seen situations, for example, where couples have been married for about 7 to 10 years. They're having some marital issues surrounding especially money and assets. And they wanted to address those issues, put those issues to the side to give the relationship a chance. And the way they went about doing that is sitting down, entering into a postnuptial agreement, and seeing if the relationship could move forward without having these issues being like a huge red flag in the household.
So another question is there a valid argument saying that a couple who gets a prenuptial agreement is expecting a divorce to occur, and so they won't try to work through the marriage?
Not at all. I understand that that's a misconception of people, and some people believe, entering into a prenuptial agreement is as if you're already saying that you're ready for divorce. That's not the case at all. A prenuptial or postnuptial agreement, it only basically protects your rights, and it's a contract, which means this is what we're going to do in the worst case scenario. You can choose to rip your prenup apart or your postnuptial apart. You can choose to do anything you want. You can choose to divide things differently if you guys agree later on. But entering a prenuptial agreement does not mean that you're necessarily thinking about a divorce. What you're thinking about is making sure that you and your spouse are on the same page so that you don't deal with issues that may cause a divorce in the future.
So another question is, if my fiance and I plan to have children, can I get a premarital agreement that gives us joint custody and says that we share the children's expenses equally?
So that's a really good question, and we get that often. It's against public policy for people to contract as to how they're going to raise their kids. So you're not able to put into the prenup or the postnup anything dealing with a parenting plan, which is what would happen, what would you need when you have children. So how you're going to raise the kids, what religion, etc. That is not, you don't put that into a prenup or postnup, and you're not able to discuss child support either into a nuptial agreement.
So another question is, my lawyer wants to draft a prenuptial agreement and my fiance does not have a lawyer. Will the agreement be thrown out by the judge if both parties do not have lawyers?
So not necessarily. A judge is able to throw out a prenuptial agreement or a postnuptial agreement if they see certain things are not correct. For example, if they see that the agreement was signed literally the morning before the marriage, there may be an argument that the person signing was under duress, so therefore the agreement may not be valid. Or if the judge finds there's fraud, the judge can also throw it out. Looking and seeing whether both parties were represented by counsel, by an attorney, is one of the factors that the judge is going to look at. So if you guys have exchanged financial information and you guys have enough time to discuss things, and it was clear to the other spouse that they had the right to an attorney, the agreement can still be held valid. However, it's still just one of the factors that the court's going to look at when it comes to enforcing the agreement or not.
So can the terms of a prenup later change if the couple decide to?
Yes, of course. So if you and your spouse decide to change your agreement, it's very easy. You go ahead, you sit down, you come up with the new terms of your agreement, and you sign an updated pre or postnuptial agreement to amend the first one.
Okay, and the last question we have for today is, are prenuptial agreements and postnuptial agreements expensive?
So, like we said before, compared to the price of a divorce, the price of a prenuptial or postnuptial agreement are not expensive at all. So you just have to look at it from that perspective. how much money will you spend down the line if you and your spouse don't already have an agreement as to how you're going to divide these marital assets and marital debts, or if there's going to be alimony on the table, etc., etc. So
we reviewed all the questions of prenuptial and postnuptial agreements. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.
And if you'd like to get in contact with us, you can find us online at elizelawfirm.com, or you could give us a call, 305-371-8846. Thank you so much.
Thank you.